Here is the list of top 10 books that I read from the golden era of science fiction. Most scholars will agree that the golden era started somewhere between 1934 and 1937 and ended right around 1963. So this list is not going to be ranked until we get to the top 3. Those are going to be ranked in order of my preference. The first 7 are just random. Let's go. We'll start with Isaac Asimov and Foundation. It was published originally in 1951, and it's considered by many to be one of the most influential science fiction book series of all time. There are 7 books in this series. I've only read the first few, and I read them a long time ago. I do remember thinking that the ideas were incredible. The scope was fantastic, but the writing was a little dry, somewhat boring at times. However, Foundation has inspired so many other authors, and the ideas that are included in the series are fantastic. This is a classic science fiction at its best. The year was 1961, a prolific year for this author as he published 2 incredible books that year. One of them is Return from the Stars. I'm talking, of course, about Stanisław Lem, one of my all-time favorite authors. In Return from the Stars, we meet the protagonist, Hal, who returns from the stars. He was traveling in space for some 15 years, but on Earth, over 100 years have passed. Earth now is a foreign alien planet to him. In this incredible book, Stanisław Lem introduces many concepts. Some feel this is the first time we have the introduction of PTSD in a novel. Also, a ton of future technologies are introduced in this book by Lem. Famously, the e-reader makes an appearance for the very first time in this book. So a great story with many different unique aspects to it. Definitely worth reading. 10 years earlier, in 1951, John Wyndham wrote what many feel is his best book. I'm talking about The Day of the Triffids, which I read just a few months ago. I really enjoyed it. It was the first Wyndham book that I wrote. It will not be the last one. Day of the Triffids is a frightening book. It's a scary proposition. It is a dystopian future where humans, after a certain event, or most humans, go blind. And if that's not bad enough, we have carnivorous walking plants that are beginning to feed on the remaining human population. An interesting classic science fiction book from the golden era. Between 1944 and 1951, Clifford D. Simak published short stories. There were 8 of them, and in 1952 they were put together to combine into a fix-up novel called City. It's a book that I read a couple of years ago, and I really enjoyed it. I'm not a big fan of these stitch-up novels, but this one worked well. I think the main reason I enjoyed it is because it's told from dogs' perspective. Dogs have inherited Earth, and in this book, they're essentially discussing this mythical being called human. It's an interesting book. I hope you give it a shot. War is peace. Freedom is slavery. This book needs no introduction. I'm talking about one of the most famous dystopian novels of all time, Orwell's 1984. Was published in 1949 and has aged very well, in my opinion. It remains a cautionary tale that we should not take our freedoms for granted. If you have not read 1984, do yourself a favor and read it as we are in an election year. More Than Human, published in 1953, is the only book I read by the author Theodore Sturgeon. Even though the sample size for me is tiny, I can confidently say that he writes beautifully. His prose is exquisite. More Than Human is a touching, affecting, at times dark story. I loved it. In the 70 years that have passed since its publication, it has aged extremely well. The story is weird, and I feel like the less you know about it, the better off you are. But let's just say that there are 7 protagonists in this story. Each one of them possesses some incredible powers. However, together they are more than human. 451 degrees is supposedly the temperature at which paper self-ignites. and Fahrenheit 451 is probably Ray Bradbury's magnum opus. It's not my favorite of his, but it is a powerful story about censorship, book banning, still a thing today, and book burning, of course. Written in 1953, it's one of the great examples of dystopian science fiction and another prime example of a cautionary tale that has influenced many other authors. And now we're gonna do a countdown of my top 3 books from the golden era of science fiction. At number 3, Arthur C. Clarke with Childhood's End. This is another book published in 1953. It was a good year for science fiction. And with Childhood's End, Arthur C. Clarke paints an amazing picture of a future first contact. The book is put together from 3 separate stories, each one spanning, if I recall correctly, 50-year time period. In the first story, we are introduced to aliens who visit Earth. They hover over major cities, that they do not have destruction of humanity as their goal. But what is their end game? This is a fascinating, thought-provoking, and, at least in one instance, jaw-dropping book. I recommend reading Arthur C. Clarke's Childhood's End. It is probably my favorite of all Arthur C. Clarke's books. At number 2, Flowers for Algernon. This was originally written as a short story in 1959. That's why I'm including it among the top 10 books from the golden era of science fiction. It is a book that squeezed tears from my eyes. In it, we meet Charlie Gordon, a man with a very low IQ, who gets an opportunity to go through an experimental surgery to increase his level of intelligence. He is going to be the first one to undergo this procedure. It was previously only successfully performed on a mouse. Algernon is the name of the mouse. This "be careful what you wish for" story has many affecting, touching moments. If you've read Flowers for Algernon, let me know in the comments below if it affected you as much as it affected me. I had my wife read it recently, and she also loved it. It's my number 2 book, and it's one of those books that's easy to recommend to anyone. And my number 1 choice, my most favorite book from the golden era of science fiction, as we defined it, is Solaris by Stanisław Lem. This mesmerizing, thought-provoking book was written in 1961. It's the other Stanisław Lem book from that year. It is a tale that, to me, beautifully weaves the best that science fiction has to offer. The grandeur of space, of traveling to different worlds, to discovering alien beings. But at heart, it's a look inward into our own psychology, struggling with our own thoughts, being faced with our past. It is a book that is scary at times. It's got heavy horror elements, thought-provoking, psychological, beautifully written. I read it in the original Polish, but I have heard that the translation of Solaris is also excellent. It has been adapted into 2 movies, but they're both different, and I think they both miss what is at heart of this novel. If you have not read Solaris by Stanisław Lem, I recommend you pick it up and see how you feel about it. It is one of my all-time favorite science fiction books, and it's one that I keep coming back to. I hope you give it a chance. If you've read Solaris or any of the books I talked about in this video, please leave a comment below. Let me know how you felt about them. If you feel that I missed the book from this fairly widely defined era, please let me know. Perhaps I have not read it. I would love to get your recommendations. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing, give a like, and I'll talk to you on the next one. Thanks.